So, Bob's Burgers kind of changed my life. Okay, no, that's not true. But Bob's Burgers did kind of change the way that I look at media. Well, no, that's not quite true either. Let me explain. Part 1. A beef introduction burger. Bob's Burgers is a show that I enjoy very much. A show that makes me genuinely laugh out loud, even when watching it by myself. Which is saying at least a little something, given that comedy as a medium for expression has a tendency to go right through me. I could line up my top 5 Simpsons episodes and watch them in succession, enjoy every minute of it, and never make a sound. But this show just has a different feel to it. The experience of it, I mean. I don't know, maybe it's less bogged down by the baggage of nostalgia and burnout. Maybe there's a purity to it because it's new, current, and arguably still good. It has yet to undergo the vigorous washboard cleansing ritual of being recontextualized as a product of its time, and therefore requires no mental gymnastics to enjoy in real time through self-editing and compartmentalization. And where would one find reason to inject those things anyway? It's a show that celebrates both eccentricity and mundanity right on its face, expressing authenticity through the absurd.
Dear Diary, tonight we're sneaking into the dangerous taffy factory. Also, if boys had uteruses, they'd be called deuteruses.
Deuteruses.
So maybe that lack of internal processing results in more external reactions. That seems logical enough, and frankly was going to be the basic thesis of this essay. Bob's Burgers is a show for everyone because it is not a show about anyone. It's not a biting satire of suburban America, nor a fetishization of the ironic detachment made popular by its predecessors. It's a show about a specific family with specific struggles in a specific town, inhabited by many specific characters. There are no immediately apparent politics or agendas, and the stakes are so consistently low that it's often super easy to find catharsis in a heartfelt goodbye between a boy and his toilet, or a girl and her bad self. The Belchers are some seriously quirky turkeys, and I love tuning in just to hang out with them for like 22 minutes at a time. I open this piece like this because you're probably tuned in because you like the show too, and I don't really want to challenge that. But in doing some research on the show, I did discover something I didn't really expect to find. Myself. No? Too much? Okay, sorry. I found some controversy surrounding an early episode. Part 2. The Rude Awakenings Burger. To get right into it, Season 1, Episode 6 features the first and only appearance of these 3 characters, Glitter, Cha-Cha, and Kenneth from 30 Rock. Bob takes a night job as a cab driver to help pay for Tina's 13th birthday party and ends up frequenting the sketchier parts of town, befriending these 3 in the process. The show refers to them exclusively as transvestite prostitutes and features more than a couple gags calling attention to that. There's close-ups of Adam's apples, jokes about accidentally kissing your first boy, and even
A town full of doctors who refuse to remove your penis.
And these are not the only moments from the episode I've seen scrutinized for the misrepresentation or stereotyping of transgender people, but this video is not intended to be a damning expose of one element of one episode of one silly cartoon show that aired in 2011. Nor is it a rebuttal to those who didn't like it. I mean it to be more of a personal confession, a broader consideration of my relationship with the word problematic. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because it could not be further from my lane, but here's a summary of why this episode was a trigger for some. 1. The writers don't seem to know or care about the difference between a transvestite man and a transgender woman. The characters seem to identify as whichever one suits the joke being told. 2. With so little representation of trans people in mainstream media, the fact that these characters are written as crack-smoking prostitutes kinda sucks. 3. The jokes are almost exclusively framed by the discomfort of the men who interact with them, meaning that the expectation of the writers is that the audience will relate to that discomfort and feel validated enough to laugh. And they're right. And that's the problem. Okay, I have to be honest here. This is uncomfortable. I'm trying my best to remain confident that anything I have to say is valid within the discourse simply because I have an authentic thought, which is true, but complicated. Having the right to speak my mind comes with the caveat that I must expect to be heard, not by many, perhaps. But words don't exist in a vacuum. They are meant for consumption, and so there must be a motivation, a reason to burden someone's ears with my mouth sounds, to inform, to persuade, to entertain, to shock. And that's where I'm unsure. I started writing about the show's unapologetic adherence to authenticity, both in content and design. That if the show is about anything, it's just that. Freak flags, awkward profundity, and an encyclopedia of bad puns.
It's accountant down!
Celebrate your authentic self and don't feel invalidated by the stakes at which you play. Which is great. I love it, but how can I not flinch at this episode, this one instance where the authentic voice, that is, a joke told because the writer thought it was funny, proved problematic? It doesn't necessarily contradict that central theme. Glitter, Cha-Cha, and Kenneth are never invalidated as people, and in fact, each are given a moment of signature awkward profundity when giving Tina life advice based on their unique experiences, which the show frames as positive. But that doesn't mean any of the things in this list aren't true, or that I don't agree with them. It's just that, and this is the uncomfortable part, I never really considered them before. Them being the points on the list, and also kind of, trans people. And I can't defend that. At 31 years old, I have a blind spot in my understanding of what it means to be human. And that spot is the exact shape and size of a human. So, what am I doing here? I wanted to talk about Bob's Burgers, and now I kind of want to talk about it even more, but from what position can I really claim the authority to do so? I mean, if the woke are woke and the rest don't want to be, then who is this for? And who am I to presume authorship of a valid contribution? I read a subreddit, which led me to some articles, which led me to a bowl of popcorn and several hours of ContraPoints videos. And now I feel like singing the Enlightenment song, okay? But why? So Natalie Wynn might pat me on the head for being a good little cis boy? Part 3. The Let Us Wrap This Up burger. I guess it's pretty obvious by now that this video isn't really about Bob's Burgers. I mean, that kind of goes without saying in many areas of media criticism, though, right? Like, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't speak so broadly to the motivations of other creators, but I know the big reason I talk about movies and TV shows is that it's very easy to assume credibility when the only credential required is that you've seen a thing. If I watch The Shape of Water and suddenly want to talk about gender relations and rape culture, then I can do so credibly, provided that my intent is earnest and that I remain true to the conceit that I am making an inference into the message of a film. Something else this video is not about is trans people. Don't rely on someone like me as a resource from which to learn about something I am not. No amount of historical research, social proximity, or level of empathy or interest will ever qualify me to stand at the pulpit of a community I do not represent. But I do feel a genuine need to relay this experience that I've had as the transformative thing it has been. Not necessarily to those entrenched in the cultures on either side of the road, but primarily to those with whom I've shared this lukewarm 30-year lazy river ride right down the middle. And that's where we can kind of start to come full circle and begin to see definitively what this video is about, what glitter, cha-cha, and marbles are actually representative of. Because it's not Bob's Burgers. The characters were effectively dropped after that first season episode, from which the only holdover seems to be fan favorite Marshmallow, though I'm fairly partial to cleavage to beaver myself. And it's not trans people. That was made pretty clear already. So that brings us back to that word, problematic. How do these characters represent problematic media, and why does it matter that we recognize that? An easy argument to make against this idea, an argument that I would often lean on in situations like this, is that the writer is telling a story, and that story is populated by characters. Those characters do things, and the story told by those things being done is simply an account of that. If Bob really does drive a cab to pay for Tina's party, and he does really happen to meet these people with these characteristics, then how is the story not a responsible telling of the truth? One cannot say definitively that Glitter is not representative of someone, right? There has to be someone in the real world that is like her, and therefore how can one claim bad faith in her characterization? Why does one person's representation take precedence over another? And what this argument does is position the writer in service of characters, like he or she has no part in the conception, but instead only the portrayal. Bob doesn't really drive a cab to pay for Tina's party because there is no cab and there is no Bob. They're simply the result of a series of creative decisions made by people accountable to those decisions, and that is most definitely still true for Glitter, Cha-Cha, and Marbles. They didn't need to be there. They didn't need to be prostitutes, they didn't need to smoke crack, and they didn't need to be trans. But they were, and the problem with that is a matter of motivation. The reason to burden an audience with your mouth sounds. Which is something that 99% of the time separates this show from something like Family Guy, which tends toward the if you don't like it, you don't have to watch line of thinking, purposely creating an in-group, out-group mentality within its audience, which is just something that shock comedy does. It's kind of the point. And a topic for another video. But Bob's Burgers is not shock comedy. It tells jokes through broadly relatable characters, targeting the broadest possible audience. It cemented its own little place in television history by being actively inclusive, both in content and design. Its humor is derived from character, situation, and sometimes pure absurdity.
That's your thumb.
Is it? Then what's this?
Oh my god, I don't know.
I don't know either.
And that's why it's good. That's why it works. That's also why this doesn't. This is a straight dude riffing on transvestites, even though he demonstrably does not know what that word means. And doing it specifically for an audience that could be expected to relate, the in-group of people for whom these folks are weird, silly, gross. This is an artist, or a group of artists, donning a mask they cannot claim to represent, and speaking through that mask to an audience expected to laugh at it.
Bad stuff happens in the bathroom.
Now I'm sure for some of you this is like day one of a remedial course for a language in which you're already fluent, and for others, this probably seems like a cringeworthy display of virtue signaling. I mean, okay. Thanks for all that sweet apolitical ethos. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Regardless, and I can't imagine I'm alone in this, it is a new and reformative perspective on the idea of problematic media to understand that art and audience are inseparable and in turn implicit in each other's natures. Audience implicit in art. Us implicit in this. In other words, this does not happen without a reasonable expectation that we want it, that we will like it. And I can't think of a better endorsement of socially conscious media criticism than that. This was my favorite episode. Not necessarily because of the jokes in question. Bob tries crack and Tina ties a banana peel in a knot with her mouth. It's hilarious. Back the fuck off. But I definitely watched it more than a few times without batting an eye at that stuff. And throwing a word like problematic at it at first felt like an affront. Like I was a bad person for liking a silly thing. Felt like I was expected to apologize. And that can be some harsh medicine without context or tact. It's a whole lot easier to disengage with angry people in favor of a silly joke than it is to consider that they might be angry for a reason. That they might just be right. It's not my favorite episode anymore, but you're not a bad person if you like it. I just think it's worth your time to consider, if you haven't before, why someone else might see it differently than you. I think it's worth your while to wonder and to examine what the things you like say about you, and to be conscious of that. Because it's a part of you. And you're a part of it. Hey guys, Thank you so much for watching my new video. I hope you liked it. I had a great time making it. I just wanted to drop in here real quick at the end to let you know that I'm now on Patreon. So if you'd like to support the channel and help keep me doing what I like doing so much, I'd appreciate it very, very much. You can go to the link that I'm leaving down in the description, or click the giant P that's sitting around my face somewhere. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and thank you guys. I'll see you next time.